Hey everyone, it's Mystery here. I am just fresh off of completing my first day of playing Havoc with my stream and experimenting on the new map. I did not get to play with any of the new weapons, thank you for asking. I will be making a video in the near future covering all three of those weapons at once and sort of how they stack up. I saw them in play and they looked pretty cool, but I don't know if they'll be comparable to what is the the creme de la creme right now. You know what I'm talking about. So let's talk about Havoc. And the changes that came to the game. Firstly, let's talk about the changes. There were some stealth changes that they slipped in here, and the biggest ones were the Psyker got 15 extra toughness. That actually adds up to a lot. Psychers were a little bit on the squishy side, toughness-wise, comparatively to the Vet, and the Vet, like, he already has so much toughness damage reduction in his tree with Iron Will and whatever that one is at the top of the tree. It would always seem weird to me that he had a bigger toughness pool too, and a way to instantly replenish all of it. So I'm glad that they're realizing the Psyker was a little bit behind in terms of his ways of ablating damage, so that's nice for him. And then the Zealot got this little like quality of life buff to the chorus. The relic thing, it doesn't cancel when you like vault over stuff now, which is amazing, because like you would get like you need to like close a distance to like an ally to help your team pick them up, and you knew if you like didn't go around that box it would cancel your ultimate early, and now it's garbage. And then you can't automatically cancel it too, which is great. We had these Ogryn changes that I already went over yesterday. I have cooled down a little bit about this since then, but I still just don't understand the basic premise of what these changes were for. It still feels like a nerf to me. It almost certainly does make them like marginally worse. It might make their best build better and their second best build out of their two possible builds basically worse. So it's just, I don't know, man. I don't know if I'll ever see any justification for what the idea was behind this change, and that's sort of what makes me more upset than anything. Is like, this feels completely arbitrary and unnecessary, and I don't quite get it. But maybe that's, maybe it'll all be shown in time as some part of a grandmaster plan. Okay, then the biggest changes was the enemies have changed. Gunners all now strafe you. They'll walk around and they'll shoot you at the same time. Thankfully, they removed their knockback effects so that they can't walk away from you and shoot you away from them, because that would be pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie. Sorry, I'm yawning for some reason. That'd be really, really bad. So yeah, this is actually really dangerous now. These things can like sneak up on you by just like walking into a room, and they'll just start shooting you. On regular difficulties, non-Havoc mode, they are still roughly as threatening, but you get a Reaper or two Reapers that are strafing on you, and like they are so much harder to pin down than before. And it seems like they're more resistant to like just getting stuck shooting in one direction. They can track you better, it feels like, and fuck you up. On Havoc, they're an absolute nightmare. We'll get to that in a second. And then there's not a whole lot else here that I really want to go over, except for the inclusion of a bunch of additional penances. I think these new penances are great. Clearly, this is the patch for longevity for the game, adding stuff for players who've been playing for a long time, and a lot of the penances reflect that, such as the reintroduction of the 1 million kill penance that happens to come with its own title of Poxbreaker. That's really cool. I think that longevity, things that encourage longevity, long-term goals like that are a great thing for a game like this, where like, yeah, there's not, after you've got enough resources, there's not a whole lot that keeps you playing game to game, except for I want to complete all the penances. And speaking of, my grind to complete all the penances has just been set back about 2 months, probably, because of the sheer volume of penances that they just added. I would like to see the reward track extended a little bit more, because I'm almost at the end of the reward track already, and this is but I like the reward track, so I won't dog on it too much. I think that there's some good stuff in there. I I just encourage them to do a little more. And we'll talk a little bit more about rewards when we talk about Havoc in just a second. Okay, so penances are all good. Let's first talk about Havoc as a concept and its implementation in the game. Then we'll talk about how it is to play, and then we'll talk about how I would tweak the actual, anything about it. All right. Firstly, the problems with Havoc. One, the requirements to play Havoc requires you to be level 30 and have played a Maelstrom mission. And what this ends up doing, or if you play an Auric Maelstrom mission, you can start at level 16 Havoc. What this ends up doing, at least for the first few days, is it gatekeeps people from playing, and they don't know that they aren't eligible. So I've got a ton of people in Party Finder who are queued and are trying to join games and are trying to fill into these Havoc games, and I'll accept them, and then I'll find out that they can't play because they haven't completed the prerequisite. So there's nothing blocking them from getting in there. Maybe that's a bug, but there's nothing blocking them from getting in. And people joining off my friends list or from my stream are getting in, and they're finding out that, oops, I had to complete that Maelstrom. And the other thing is, like, completing the Maelstrom has almost nothing to do with completing a Havoc. You'll know what I mean if you've done it. Completing an Auric Maelstrom gives you access to level 16 Havoc. An Auric Maelstrom is roughly like 1.2 to 1.5 times, or even 2 times as hard as a Auric Damnation. Level 16 Havoc is a heresy level mission. So it's really not that challenging at all. So you complete this really hard mission to have access to kind of like baby mode of Havoc missions. And the same thing applies all the way down at the bottom of the scale with completing the regular Maelstrom mission. Gives you access to level 1 Havoc. Level 1 Havoc is like sedition difficulty. Like, enemies are just falling over dead when you breathe on them. So here's the change that I would like to see made. Just go ahead and remove that Maelstrom mission requirement if you want to start at level 1 Havoc. That means that when players who haven't played this week and want to join in my games, they can just join. Like, they won't be able to start at level 16, but they don't need to have a Havoc at level at all. They can be a level 1 Havoc player and join into my game where I'm at 25, right? So that would make it so that there's not that weird like block that's happening. I had to ask like 6 people to leave today because I found out that they were blocked, and that sucked. It felt bad. And then leave the requirement for the Auric Maelstrom gives you level 16. So if you do want to jump up and you feel like you're ready to go ahead, just go ahead and knock out that Auric Maelstrom and prove yourself, right? And then jump up. So I think that'd be a really easy, simple fix to this. We'll see. All right. Then the other problems with the outside of it. One, and this is might just be for me. Maybe I'm stupid. Probably I'm stupid. I don't understand the level system. I don't understand why. If like I'm playing with my friend today and we're playing on 25 and he's the host, right? And then tomorrow my friend can't play, but I've got like 3 other friends who want to play. And I was like, oh dude, I was chilling out with Joe yesterday and we were playing 25. Let me just queue it up real quick. I can't queue it up until next week. And that is just odd to me. I think it makes it hard to get games at a certain level. I don't know. It feels so weird. And I think it's either one of 2 things. It's either one, this is like a limitation on the back end, like the server side that I'm not aware of and I would have no way of knowing about, or it is some sort of like preempting of some sort of like griefing or like exploit, like some way to game the system that I am not thinking about, right? I've thought about like how that would work, but I haven't thought of anything that like this would block from happening. But it feels like it's one of those things where like, yeah, if we block them from getting it until next week, we'll stop them from doing this silly thing, which would like make the system trivial or something. But I can't think of what that would be. So if you have an idea for what that is, post it down in the comments. Also, while you're down in the comments, like this video, subscribe. Okay, subscribe. Thank you. I appreciate you. I love you a lot. Okay, let's talk about the actual gameplay of Grim Protocols, aka Havoc mode. So Havoc mode, like I said, 16 is where you start at if you complete that Auric Maelstrom. I think most people are going there. It's not very hard because Havoc mode starts at heresy difficulty and doesn't go to damnation until 21. My first issue with Havoc is that I think it should be scaled you should push that difficulty up, like a tier. So right now you spend levels 1 to 30 playing within difficulties that are pretty much the same as the difficulties we have in the game. 1 is like a sedition, and 30 is like a damnation, like an auric damnation, right? Or 29. Once you hit 30, the game goes bonkers, and like I've watched some streamers play it, and it seems way harder. I would have liked for that to be the starting point, but at like level 20, and then there to be something even harder than that. Because the fact that players have already completed this task before it was even given to us, the fact that players have completed it as trios and duos. I've seen trios and duos completing Havoc 40s already. That doesn't... I don't think that's quite hard enough, I guess, is what I would say. Like, if there's any players who are skilled enough to duo this content or trio this content this early on, it needs a little bit of a buff. And I'm certain they can add more levels to it over time, but it was just kind of disappointing to me to find out I would only get 10 levels of actual like progression content, because that's what I'm here for. Is like, I love getting defeated in the mission and being like, all right, we got it this time, going back in there, I got a new strategy, and then like I get to find out that there's only actually 10 levels from 30 to 40 that are going to really pose a considerable challenge, and so that's going to be cut short a little bit. But that's all fine. What's difficult about Havoc? What is really difficult about Havoc is Pus Hardened Skin and the Blight Spreads. These other two are kind of nothing. Pus Hardened Skin makes enemies take less damage against ranged attacks. This is a big deal because like there's a lot of enemies on these higher Havocs, and you want to get them away, killed before they get close to you, and you can't do that very effectively with your ranged attacks when they have that Pus Hardened Skin. So this means you're going in there with the melee, which we'll talk about in a second. And then Blight Spreads, this means you have to fight hordes and enemies who are blighted like this in a completely different way. I actually like this one because instead of being like, it's a horde, let's just fucking shove our faces into it and slash and we'll make our way through it to the next room. Now you have to be like, oh fuck, it's a horde, but it's all blighted up. We need to like get them into a funnel point and keep our distance so we don't get our health bars corrupted all to shit. So I like that, and it actually makes the corruption resistance thing on the Zealot, which I was saying might end up being a thing like a month ago when they first announced this. I was like, here's my Zealot build. It's going to use this corruption reduction thing because I think they're going to use corruption, and here it is. Ha, doubters. But the big thing I want to say is... well, let's talk about the other big thing. The other big thing that hits you in addition to this stuff is you can get lights out, which I hate. Lights out fucks with my brain, and it like actually hurts my head. So I have to like reshade to make it not so like field of view limited. And then the other really big thing is that the Emperor's light fading means that enemies ranged gunners attack faster, and when your toughness is broken, you no longer get that like invulnerability for a second, or like near invulnerability for a second. So if your toughness is broken and you are not like actively fucking paying attention, you can get shredded to death in like 0.1 seconds. No joke. Like, you will just die and you'll be like, what happened to me? It'll be one gunner who you didn't see. I was rezzing an ally and I was like, oh, well, nothing will happen in these 3 seconds. There was no enemies around me. I was picking him up and I looked over at my chat and I looked back, and 3 regular ass gunners had like strafe walked out from a spawn door, and they all locked onto me and fired 5-round bursts at the same time, and I nearly fucking died. Thank God I had Shroudfield on cooldown so I could just like pop that and get away. But like, that is the amount of damage that can go out so fast. You don't get that like warning of, oh shit, your toughness is broken, better use an Ultra Slide or something. No, you're just dead. Okay, so that's everything about the game. Play the game, go find out for yourself how you feel about it. But here's what I feel about it. I think that this is a cool game mode, but because it is more difficult, parts of it anyway, are more difficult than regular Darktide, it exacerbates problems that have already existed within Darktide. And when there's more difficult modes introduced to any game like this, it really refines the meta, right? It really finds out what is the best and what works. And I don't think there's anything in here that encourages new forms of builds to come out, except for maybe the corruption thing. But it's not, there's nothing in here that is like, oh, you know, it's the perfect solution to this. I'm gonna bring the Ogryn. And that's the big thing I like to talk about here is I think the Ogryn of all classes gets dunked on by these changes the most, because he was already really vulnerable, especially for new players, to Gunner, you know, fucking. Like, they will just completely destroy him from a million light years away because they can see him and they can lock onto him, and he has a hard time dodging. So he can get destroyed, and Havoc makes that even worse because, you know, they are super perceptive and they fire super fast and they strafe, and he doesn't get the advantages that other classes have of being able to remove them. I mean, sure, you could use his new gun or whatever, but like, you know, the Psyker can just conjure a bubble and hide behind that, or has like ways to regenerate their toughness at range that are really considerate. The Veteran can have infinite toughness at range and snipe all these enemies out, and the Zealot has always been the least bothered by Gunners of all the classes because he can just slide around all damn day, and then when he's tired of sliding, he'll just start charging everywhere, and that ignores all gunner damage. So yeah, the Zealot basically isn't affected by the Gunners to Gunner changes if you're playing really well, because you were already sliding under the Gunner damage and just completely avoiding them. So you'll just style all over them. But the big guy, the poor big guy, you know, he was already having to be like, all right, I'm going to make it this Gunner, I'm going to beat him up, but he's going to shoot me a little bit. But now the Gunner is walking away from you, and he's going to shoot you a lot bit, because on Havoc, they're going to go wild and blow like 50 holes in your face before you get to them. So, and the other thing is like, because some of these blessings, like for plus hardened skin, makes ranged weapons worse, it means you need to have a really capable melee weapon, which again, like I was saying before, because this is a harder mode, it pushes people to use the better things. And we have seen this huge dearth of dueling swords recently, and now you get in here and it's literally just dueling swords city, because you need to have a good melee weapon, because if you come up against a pack of plus hardened skin crushers, you're fucking dead if you didn't bring the dueling swords. Basically, if you didn't get them swords out, you're gonna get laid out real quick. And that is the thing that all the classes except for Ogryn have access to. Granted, he has the shield and the pick, which are pretty good, but like, they're not dueling sword. And yeah, I think that I think it's a part of the nature of a game mode like this. It's going to force players into playing like the more optimal thing, but this is really going to expose the something that players have been sore about for a while, which is that the optimal thing is becoming really obvious, and players are gravitating to it more and more, and we're beginning to see a bit of a monoculture in terms of like, oh, how do we play Zealot? Well, we charge and we have the dueling sword. How do we play Veteran? Well, we have the plasma gun and we have the dueling sword and we use shout, right? Psyker and Ogryn are still up in the air, but Ogryn is getting monoculture. He's just charge and clobber things heavy hitter, right? The build diversity is going down because of these weapons are so much better, and you need the best possible weapon to do this stuff. And I would love to see the build diversity go up by having some modifiers in here that encourage different playstyles. I think that's what the attempt was to do with plus hardened skin, of making them protected against ranged attacks, but it just makes you have to bring the best possible melee. So if there were modifiers that said like, oh, all your dueling swords are broken or something like that would be funny, and like, it would make the game very different. I would love to see them experiment with stuff like that to get players away from the comfort picks and into some more experimental territory. Okay guys, that's everything I had to say. I'll be streaming again tomorrow. We'll be going from 23 and up from there in Havoc. Perhaps we'll join in with someone else who's at a higher Havoc level at some point. And yeah, I'll see y'all then. Peace out. Mysteries out here. Bye.